All right. Welcome, gentlemen. Everybody's still looking fresh. Feeling good? Yeah. Real quick. I think like that last conversation. I was just kind of curious because everybody's getting really personal about the models they're using, right? So can we do a little survey? Who's here? Like just as far as your main models that you use every day, GPT people. Whoa. There's very. Only a few. Gemini? A little bit more? Yeah. How about Claude? Okay, Claude. Okay, within Claude, Opus? Fable? Opus 5.0? Who here knows the difference? Like, they can actually feel the difference between, like, Opus variations. I do. I complain to him every single time, I'm like, hey, what just happened here? This feels like a 4.6 conversation. I need a 4.7 right now. Yeah. Okay, so even more relevant today. How about the Chinese models? DeepSeek? Okay, a few. The other ones, Quen? Quen? Okay. Any other ones that are like really? Kimi? Okay. And I'm just curious, like when you guys use these, I mean, you guys feel the difference, right? That's why we make these changes. So we're going to get into that right now in this next panel, but we're going to really frame this as the token economy, right? Because we're changing these based off of fields, but then we might get a surprise budget. Who here has gotten a heart attack as far as their token bills? Anybody? Yeah? A lot of nervous laughter here. So who's here got like a big surprise that they just regret? No? Yeah? Okay. So we've gotten some. So it changes how you do things, right? As far as the economy, because money matters. So then here we're going to be talking about the token economy, because when we're projecting this into a larger org, we're building for enterprise, all of this stuff really matters. And you're going to have, it's not just you that just lost money, but you're going to have to answer some questions about why you did something, how you wired it up, what was your rationale behind it, right? So let's kick it off. Let's do some intros real quick for our panelists down the road. Please share what you do and what your company does and how it relates to this panel.
Sure. So my name is Matthew Wimberly. I'm the Chief Technology Officer, co-founder here at Chiri. I lead product engineering as well as service delivery across the org. We have a joke internally that I'm the most forward deployed engineer in the company. And so I really focus on how we take ideas from inception with clients all the way to enterprise scale and reliability, right?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Davy. I'm the founder and CEO of GoodVision. So our service is more like provide a global inference network with compute power. So we are here exactly to resolve the issues like a lot of people, they don't know what's the difference between different models, different companies, open source one, closed source one. And also we have our own AI token factory to produce high efficient, lower cost tokens for the customers. And in the meanwhile, we are trying to build some agent for customers as well. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Eugene. I'm a cloud solution architect with Tencent. I'm not going to introduce Tencent. I'm sure you guys already heard about it.
Who's Tencent?
We're a combination of Nickelback and 50 Cent.
There we go.
That's good. I work with customers to look at their various different requirements. Sometimes it's migration to the cloud. Sometimes it's AI. So I think my contribution today actually is really kind of just sharing some of the customer feedbacks we receive when talking about one of our services.
Fantastic. Let's get into it. So, first things first, token prices has gone down, but bills has gone up. Jevons Paradox is in effect, right? Everybody knows what Jevons Paradox is. The lower the cost, the higher the usage. I drink more Diet Coke because there's no calories, but then I end up drinking a lot of Diet Coke, too much maybe. But Eugene, what's your thoughts on that as far as, what are you seeing as far as the patterns in enterprise around Jevons Paradox, bills going up?
So one thing that I tend to see is because it's so cheap, right? People will say, well, it doesn't matter if I run X number of agents, and then maybe even have my agents spawn agents, and pretty soon you use up a month's worth of tokens in 2 days. This happens within our solution architect team. We have a couple of colleagues who are very into using AI tokens. And initially it doesn't feel like much of an impact, right? Because it's $10, $20 a month, but it could very easily scale up to hundreds, thousands of dollars if you're not careful. One feedback I tend to see from customers is they don't have a good way of measuring how these tokens are I guess that affects the ROI from these tokens. So it's cheap, nobody cares if you use 1 million tokens, 1 billion tokens, but at some point in time, somebody's going to come back, the CFO's going to come back and say, well, I just spent $500,000 in the last 6 months. What did you get out of it? And so that's one of the major reasons. It's like you said, like code, 0 calories, right? We can use as much as we can. At the user level, they don't feel the impact. And at the executive level, there's a clear difficulty in figuring out how do we measure it.
Yeah, absolutely. Davy, want to add some thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, we serve quite a few customers, and one of the interesting ways that our customer measure their ROI is using. We have been working with customers about building agents, and they compare the cost between building agent and after the agent. One our biotech company, previously they are using the manual to process the data, at least one engineering for 3 days, and after we working together build the agent, it took about 15 minutes with the $7 token cost. So that's a quite good way for the customers to measure the ROI by output. But actually, in the meanwhile, I do see a lot of customers challenging, like they are using Anthropic code to help them to improve the efficiency. But by ending with ask the Anthropic, a lot of times, quite more again, with a more endless loop to help the customer, to help the code debug, optimize functions, end up with nothing. So they lost a day. And some of the customers realize at the end of the day, they spend a day of time, thousands of tokens, millions of tokens without nothing. So that's a bad case we have seen with our customers.
You know what it's like? It's like, maybe I'm going to date myself. My parents used to drop me off at the arcade and you got $20 and you better make it last for 4 hours because that was for babysitting, basically. But now it's like they give you a card, but they don't tell you how many credits are in these machines, and you just, you can burn up your tokens in 10 minutes, and then just be watching everybody else play. What's your thoughts on this, Matt?
Yeah, so Chiri, we're an AI managed service provider, right? So we meet a lot of clients, they come in, they say, hey, we've enabled everyone to be a builder, we're proliferating these apps across our ecosystem, and we sometimes think that you're reinventing microservices from first principles, but with non-technical stuff. But a lot of the times the ROI is opaque. And these businesses are running into a challenge where at Chiri, what we believe is that if tokens are going to become the substrate of labor, if they're really going to drive the economics and the revenue of a business, then if you cannot project your token use into the future, that is a business continuity risk, right? And so if you look at Frontier Labs, these AI model providers want to keep the token consumption opaque. This is a crude joke, but that first baggie is always free. And where you end up going with that is that you're hiding what the ROI is as well as the token consumption. On our platform, we tackled token consumption and cost controls on day one, so that way we can grow with the customer on a usage-based paradigm and identify the ROI from statement of work inception, right? What are we building towards? What work are we augmenting? Such that way, when we meet that goal, by implementing a workflow, building an application on our platform, hosting either in their cloud or in ours, we've already identified what is the return that we're going to get, starting here and going all the way to the end.
Very good, very good. And I think we're all evolving at different speeds in this, right? But there's a lot of folks that's using a single API key, and then there's a group of guys using its tokens. How important is it, Eugene, to have token tracking per application?
I think it's actually critical, right? Because if you have a single token API for every access, you have no way to track who uses it. You have no way to track what's been accomplished. There's no real way to calculate ROI if you have a single key. And then with the advent of many different models, I'm sure everybody here uses more than one model. Right? Yesterday I tried to get Gemini to draft a solution for me, and then I have to feed that to Copilot because I figured Gemini is probably not correct. And then of course Copilot came out with a bunch of issues, and you would think Gemini, you'd be like a typical engineer, go, no, I'm correct. No, I fed the issues back, and they came back, go, oh, you're right, I didn't address these, right? And the back and forth iteration between multiple models is probably something a lot of people do, different types of workloads, and that's actually required. You can't just depend on a single model. And if you're, if in your pool of models you have one that's super expensive and you can't figure out how to orchestrate your calls, you might end up just paying a lot more money than what you're.
Good point. Davy, you have a smart routing product.
Yes, exactly. That's here I want to mention like one key to access the major models in the world, and we have a smart routing layer. Because when we mention that, hey, I see a lot of people using Anthropic, but think about that, does every request worth the price of Anthropic? In the real world, we hear an architect with a higher compensation, but some of the junior developers to develop every modules. So on our smart routing platform, when the requests come in, we split. We just try to break down the work, using the smartest model to break down the work, and using the cheapest but not so strong models to handle the simple task. And combined together, we can lower your cost by at least 16%. And also back to your questions, we can easily figure out the returns and the ROIs, and we can give you a very detailed report for, hey, for this request, 20% go to Anthropic, and the rest go to the open source ones, which is 1/10 cheaper. So that's what we are doing now by leveraging our smart routing product to help you with the best model for the request.
Matt, are you guys helping customers solve this and build custom tools around this too?
We are. So one of the ways that we're doing this is we're model agnostic from the jump, right? So we integrate with 2,000 different applications. We have 300 different models within our Inference Gateway partnership. One of the things that we often find is that clients come to us and say, we need frontier level intelligence and we don't want frontier level cost. And we assist them with evaluating what that workload actually needs so that they can start at a frontier level capability and then migrate over time provably to get better ROI on some of the unit economics, for example, that non-domestic models offer. But one of the other concerns that clients often have is the traceability, the auditability of their environment, right? These are no longer humans that are doing the work, it's agents at scale. And so we're introducing governance products, right, that allow you the full end-to-end immutable traceability of what are your agents doing, where, when, and why, as well as cost quotas and cost controls across the stack. Because you need full transparency across, let's say, a 10,000 agent fleet to know exactly what is the thread that's either being attacked and corrupted with a poisoning attack or equivalent, as well as full cost controls over, okay, we're getting ROI over here from this particular work stream, but maybe it's being overused or underutilized.
All right, so Davey, maybe we can double click real quick because when, like Matt said, when the agents start making their own decisions and then they start getting a big workload, all those tokens are they're deciding on how much tokens to burn. What's a solution for that from your side?
The solution for if the agent decide themselves, actually our platform decide for them. And also we have our detailed log to give you the traceabilities and the auditability, but actually that's not our expertise, that's their expertise. Certainly we work with them together. And also in the meanwhile, we give the customer several options. Either we choose them 100% automatically for them, or they can give us their preference, like they prefer price first, cost first, or accuracy first. So they can have different profiles, or they can choose specific models. And the reason why we have such a lot of models because we connect with Token Hub. Token Hub has a lot of models on that. So we partner with Tencent Token Hub as our foundation and give the accessibilities to those models, and we build on that with our smart routing layer.
All right, let's go to Token Hub real quick. So it's not just you having this a card at the arcade and you get tokens. It's a team of kids using the same token budget, right? So what's an effective system in dividing out and being able to parse out the right token budgets across the team, Eugene?
So for Token Hub, because we didn't want to just build another aggregator service, because everybody out there probably haven't used an aggregator service and probably been disappointed. We wanted to build an actual model as a service layer into the service. So in addition to being able to federate, host, and aggregate your API calls, we track things like the model statistics, usage, time to first token, tokens per second, all these values that can help you figure out whether or not your spend is worth it. We also allow multiple API keys, so going back to that earlier question, your API keys can be configured based on different models. You can have a separate TPM per API key. So that makes, let's say you have a new team that's new to AI, you can give them an API key, set it to auto model so that you let Token Hub decide which model to route their API calls to, and set it to a relatively low TPM so that they don't just blow their budget. And then as they maybe improve their usage and their knowledge of using AI, you can then tune that up. Because we work mainly with open source models, we're also able to adapt new releases very quickly. Most of the time it stays zero. So last night we just rolled out Jevons.
Very cool, Matt. How about from your perspective, token budgeting across enterprise clients? How do you guys help navigate that conversation?
Sure. So at the platform level, what we do is we can gate specific models to specific users, right? So we work on an assignment base, similar to how we gate specific applications from specific users as well. And one of the interesting things about that from our perspective is that oftentimes what we hear is that there are individual point solutions being applied to teams to try to solve specific problems. But the challenge is that all of our companies deal with SaaS fragmentation. Right? You have these 10 different interfaces where you have to synthesize information in your brain and then go and input data and just kind of shuffle it down a factory assembly line. And so rather than doing kind of the first step, in our opinion, which is gating, call it image models shouldn't go to engineers so they don't make memes at work because they're expensive to generate, we can take that a step further, which is that we're willing to, as a company, embed a forward-deployed operator and a forward-deployed engineer to work alongside your teams, learn the needs of your business, identify the areas that need assistance, and what the ROI is going to be. And oftentimes what we find our clients are most impacted by is collapsing their SaaS stack into a single pane of glass for that particular job function. And so that allows us, rather than you bending the knee on your workflows to the SaaS product that you're beholden to, rather instead weaving AI into a custom fit product for your company, such that your workflows are now embedded within this stack that we build and we host or we assist you to host in your environment. And that allows us to retrofit custom software to you rather than all of the value of your business accruing into these different products. And so the products eventually, they can go away. You can swap from Jira to Linear or Asana or equivalent for program management. But the application that we're ending up building, you're getting all of the token utilization in an area that matters. Because right now, we're at this phase of adoption cycle where individuals think that everyone needs to be a builder. And you're going to proliferate 100 new SaaS products internally that you already are dealing with 70 that you don't like, and then you have this fragmentation of who owns the roadmap. Whereas instead what you can do is collapse the stack you already have, gain benefit from accruing that value to a product that you control, and then the SaaS products later can melt away.
Okay. All right, let's just say, good answer, and let's just say in an organization if we can get ideally everybody organized into these budgets, that'd be great, but there's always this shadow AI issue. And it's not for bad, right? A lot of folks, they're just exploring and discovering and innovating on their own, and sometimes they find great stuff. But this is now open to all three of you. How do we deal with shadow AI responsibly?
I'll tackle it first. So the challenge, in my opinion, and of the opinion of Chiri, is that shadow AI is existing to solve a need that the company is not meeting, right? And so what a lot of these companies are doing is they're attempting to deploy either point solutions or a blanket solution to a problem. I like Claude, but I use Grok at home, and you know, where does the rubber meet the road? But really the primary concern is IP leakage, alpha leakage, you know, it's not necessarily an enterprise contract, etc. And to stop that burning need, what we're discovering is that not only is not everyone a builder, but some people are, it is okay to be a consumer of a product or of AI, and that the company needs to work on what are the specific workflows and areas that that employee is attempting to solve with these products, and then deploy you know, a targeted project in order to meet them.
Yeah, from our perspective, actually, we are trying to think like why everybody using AI as a fundamental question. So, as a company level, we are trying to AI to recreate their not only software but also their working patterns, and especially change their work patterns. I know everybody likes to sit in their comfortable zone, but unfortunately, we are seeing that AI is changing everybody's work style and lifestyle. So now my kids are used to talk to OpenAI every day. So what we are doing is like trying to use AI to help the customer to resolve the issue, not recreate, not replace the software. So the very popular word, the FDE, now we are sending our engineers, like you mentioned, to the customer side, not understanding their current software, but trying to understand their current workflow. So we're focusing on that. So it's not just increase efficiency, but also create something that generates revenue for customers or saving the customer's cost. That will be a much value add. So that's where we can do this.
I think at Tencent, many of our tools are available internally for employees to use. Right? We put in things like budgets and caps and all the different governance-related levers. But I think the main thing really is still training, because no amount of boundaries and firewalls is going to prevent somebody from copy and pasting your internal top secret content and put it into Cloud or Gemini and instantly leak everything. So providing the tools is definitely great, right? Especially if you can provide it and make it affordable for people to use without having to worry. But kind of drilling that message across that, look, we're not preventing you from using your own, version of whatever AI that you prefer, but you have to be aware that you're not putting confidential information outside of what you need.
That never happens. What are you talking about? Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna round this out with a really big topic, controversial about ROI. But I also want to let the audience know that we're gonna have a little bit of a Q&A session here, right? Because everybody's building in slightly different ways, so we're gonna open it up to the audience. Troy, if you could help me run the mic. But on ROI, a lot of folks are you gotta use your tokens and then your router tokens, and then it's how do they track ROI? Maybe I can ask the question this way. How are you seeing folks track ROI? Because a lot of it is largely on individual subjective feel. And then how should it be? Eugene.
So I know our internal tools will record all the prompts, right? So if I'm gonna take my daughter's homework and put it through WorkBuddy and do all of her homework for her, I'm sure IT and Anderson will come knocking on my door and go, or coming to my cube out of the door and go, hey, what's going on? You're wasting our company funds to do homework. For ROI, I think there are a couple of metrics. I mean, you mentioned the very original one, how much of your token limit have you used up? That obviously doesn't measure much, right? We talk about agents, so we can look at cost per agent, right? How much does it cost to actually run this agent and how much value is the service that this agent performing, cost. So that's one measure that I think people are starting to look at. Another measure is just how much human work, right? Salary this particular AI task replace. So my example earlier where I had Gemini build a solution for me, had I tried to do this manually, it probably have been 3 weeks of going through hundreds of thousands of lines of code and debugging, but it took me an hour and two AIs and not a lot of money to do it. There's definitely value in that, but how do you assign dollar value to that? How do you make that make sense?
It's an elusive question, right? And I think this is why it's worth a conversation, because we kind of want to hear how other folks are asking these questions. Davy, what do you think?
Yeah, actually for me it's quite simple. I can give you a concrete example. We have been helping a factory to sell their goods. That's a very common thing. But previously they need to hire a team to create the content and publish the videos on TikTok, on those YouTube, and they need to hire another group of people to collect the feedback, handle the queries, handle the shipment, handle the payment, handle the support. But now they're just trying to buy an agent. Maybe that's worth several $1,000s, but they believe that that's worth that investment because it's much cheaper than hiring a group of people. So that's very obvious one, like the human work versus the agent, a group agent. That's the cost saving and also revenue generation as well. So for me, two parts. One is revenue generation and the other is cost saving for the ROI.
Yeah, so actually echoing what Davey was saying. So during statement of work intake, we typically identify 2 buckets, right? It's either revenue generating activity because businesses exist to make money. We've all been kind of spending some cycles internally building internal products that assist us in our manual work, but at the end of the day, you have to go back to your core competency as a business, which is generating revenue. And so we identify revenue generating activity or cost saving manual labor because everyone has 40 hours of work in a week or more that we don't like doing, right? And so we identify those early at contract signing and then work directly to the end result so that way we know exactly what we're getting by the time the project is done, right? And one of the other sides of this is that we're able to embed with clients to ensure that the software that we're leaving behind, the platform that we're leaving behind, molds exactly to the business function that we're specifically serving.
Iron Man suit, man. All right. So let's save a little bit of time because I know we want to get networking, but I'm sure you guys have burning questions. Sir.
So I use Cloud, and there is a version of Cloud where you can use it for free, up to a certain limit. So, and when my limit is finished, I have to wait until I start again. So, whatever I'm doing with Cloud can bring maybe some benefit for me. Is that how about Cloud itself for Anthropic? They are not getting any money from me. So the ROI here is the ROI for Cloud or ROI for me? Of the user. Which ROI we are talking about?
Sure. Yes. So there's 2 versions of ROI is what we were talking about with this question. Is it ROI for him as a user of a free subscription, or is it ROI for Anthropic? And I would assert that actually with Anthropic in particular, it's ROI for Anthropic end-to-end, because they're going to take your data. If you look at something like an inference gateway of OpenRouter, for example, even if you're routing to Anthropic, they don't provide 0 data retention. And so the value is accruing to Anthropic more than you as an end user. They're hiding the token consumption so that way you subscribe and get more, and they'll subsidize that with venture capital dollars. But the other side of that our company services is we have an ontology product. And that's a fancy word for a knowledge graph. If I had 2 hands, I'd say that it's me and my wife, and then the connecting line is our relationship, except that grows with the company and with the usage over time. The applications we build on top feed that ontology as well, so they start to feel more and more and more tied to you and the things that you care about. But the other side of that is that when you think about where does the value accrue if you have to switch an enterprise provider from OpenAI to Anthropic, you're losing the memories, you're losing the work history, the chats, etc. Whereas with model agnosticism and this, call it a private brain of an ontology that we provide to our clients, the switching cost is nothing, because we can swap out the inference time, but it still has access to all of your data, which accrues value to the end user.
Again, what is the argument to use the
Data.
free?
Data, you are the product.
To use my data.
Oh yeah.
Like Facebook. Same idea. Anything to add there?
I think from a pure dollar value, right, it's just spending less, right? So any way you can optimize your token usage without impacting the quality of the output, it is an ROI for the company or for the individual depending on how much token you use. An example we tend to look at is, if you use Anthropic for everything today, does it really make sense? Could you maybe orchestrate some of those API calls to DeepSeek and to Minimax or to Kimi? And nobody's saying don't use OpenAI, don't use Anthropic because they build great models, but they also charge a large amount of money for their models. So if you could look at your workload, whether you do it yourself or you use one of the products offered on stage, to analyze your workload and figure out maybe 80% of this workload can go to some other less costly model, right there, and you cut your monthly cost by probably 40-50% without impacting any sort of output or quality. Tencent has we have an auto routing algorithm built into Token Hub. So if you want to use that, you can, and we will route your API calls to the various open source models. But a lot of times, it's definitely something every customer should test and check, because routing algorithms are, for us, it's based on our internal data. It may not necessarily match yours. So we always tell customers, run the POC, do a test, make sure that routing output is correct, and go from there. Yes, it's open to individuals.
You should try it, that's why we're here. You gotta set us up. Davy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to explain in another perspective. No matter you're free, you're $20, you're $200, from Anthropic, they are losing money. They spend like $2,000 to serve you $200 of subscription. But where they can get money? They get the data, train their models, make their models smarter, and provide basically to business. So actually, that's the reason why you can see a lot of advertisement from OpenAI business, Anthropic business. So they get their money from business side, not you.
Question over there?
Thank you. Yeah, how do you verify the return on investment you get out of the execution of a workflow with agentic process? What's the verification process? We keep saying that we achieve the ROI through this, but you said labor cost, right? I mean the payroll plus, but that could be more than the labor cost, right? That can be significantly improve the business processes. That could be 10x or more. So what is the verification process? Yeah, I put this much token, what I get it out of this, and what's the process? Is there any process involved?
Yeah, so I'll give a real world example of one of our clients. A lot of the time clients ask us, are you going to come in and replace headcount or cut headcount, etc., and things like that. The answer is no. Our goal is to empower you to do more work with what you have today. But we did have a situation in a finance role where our client was stating, hey, we have this head in accounting, and he's retiring. And we called him our internal Rain Man. And that set off alarm bells in my mind, because that means you have not mapped exactly what that individual does. And so they know the work output, but not the specific tasks or what gets done, right? And so where we embedded was going and identifying, literally recording. We have a product very similar to it's a pop-out that looks like Google Meet. We record the work that that individual is doing, run it through our system. It can support multi-hour recordings. and it identifies the specific steps of the workflow that that individual does on their desktop, what products they go to, cross-references it to our catalog of supported applications, and then identifies, okay, that's SOP number 1. And then now the system is able to generate an agent that identifies this is where the human remains in the loop. We were able to upskill the existing staff. And so the ROI there was that they didn't replace that individual and have to train another replacement. They instead upskilled the existing staff.
Good question. Raise your hand if you have more questions. We're going to try to get them all in. We got another one over there. Sir, go ahead.
Thank you. Great points. My name is Rishikesh. I have a basic question, like what happens to the token economy once this honeymoon phase of or subsidized phase of these LLMs go away? You know, what happened with Uber post-COVID? You know, I'm concerned, you know.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting. The venture capital subsidy exists for quite a few of the subscription tiers, even at the enterprise level. Like if you take a look at Anthropic, for example, did you know that at 151 employees, you go to usage-based billing and your cost will double overnight? So it's interesting because they're subsidizing, these frontier model apps are subsidizing your usage to get you hooked, such that it's then this substrate of how labor gets done. But then you're already seeing that the more work that you can do, the cost floor is rising with every model release. And so that's because venture capital has to get a return on the investment that they've given. And so we're burning venture capital dollars in order to satisfy getting embedded and getting the product market fit for all of those models. But on the flip side, as these larger companies start to go and have difficulty with raising, difficulty potentially going to IPO to get their next bridge round of funding, what we would expect is we start to see usage-based pricing becomes very, very common.
My personal opinion, this has nothing to do with Tencent. My personal opinion is I think it's going to go the same route as search engines. Right? The AI is a much smarter version of Google. Right? When Google first came out, everybody's super excited. I can type in a couple keywords, get a bunch of information back, and the first one, it's not necessarily always correct. Right? Similar with your first response back on AI. We definitely have all sorts of issues and difficulties, right? The resource consumption, building data centers, cost of tokens, but cost of tokens is going down, right? At some point, it's just going to become a commodity item. Some of these tokens are already commodities. So there could be a time when you just use AI as you use search today, right? It's not something you have to consider. You don't have to worry about a suffice bill because it's just gotten so cheap.
Sir, with a cool company name. What's your company name?
Oh, Ignition AI. I'm actually here with Danny Connect too. I'm actually really curious what you guys think about. I see two competing directions here, and the gentleman had a great segue about Uber. We all remember when Uber was $4 for a ride, and now it's $14 for the same ride, right? So for enterprise, we're seeing token use go up, but we're also seeing the SLMs get to the point where they can do the vast majority of what we're going to be needing them to do. Frankly, within a year, most non-coding enterprise processes will be, you could run an on-prem SLM. So with Anthropic, we know they're subsidizing, same with OpenAI. They're going to get to the point where they need to start charging more or figure out a way to get way better value for inference. But the SLMs that I can just put a box on my server, why wouldn't I just do that? And how do you see those two things combining? And what's your time frame for where people might just wake up to, I like Anthropic, but maybe we don't need them anymore.
I would assert that you don't, right? So as long as you take a look at, okay, where is the value of the tokens being spent accruing? Like I had mentioned previously that my company offers an ontology product. So we accrue token prompting value to you rather than to Anthropic, OpenAI, etc. Now, that sets you off on the right foot. That means that later on, a fine-tuned model can certainly fit your needs. But what we're finding with clients is that if the point solutions of SaaS products don't necessarily work, they often don't have the internal talent in order to bridge this gap. And so the managed service provider lens that we take on the market is such that we can walk the walk from inception up to enterprise scale, and then that includes later on fine-tuning models. Because at the end of the day, you don't necessarily need frontier level intelligence. We actually had a previous panel, Kamiwaza. They're another ontology provider in the space, and they were talking about a fine tune of like, I think it was Gemma 3.18b is able to do 96% of the Social Security Administration's work, which is crazy for a $3 million rack. But a lot of companies that exist out there do not have the expertise in-house to build these products. The point solutions they're trying to merge together into these puzzle pieces that don't fit quite perfectly don't solve the necessary need that they have. And then the other side of that is that they don't maybe have the reputation or the cost basis to be able to recruit the talent in order to build it themselves. And so coming to what we believe is a managed service provider lens gives them the benefit of a batteries included solution that will grow with them on a usage-based model, as opposed to, you know, like our typical statement is, if you're too large for Copilot, but you know, too small for Palantir and Accenture, you fit very firmly with us.
Yeah, actually, Uber is a great example, but on the other side, I've been going through the whole cloud cycle. You know, at the very beginning, cloud selling the same concept, pay as you go per hour, right? But even today, you still have the options to build your own data centers and buy your own servers, install your application there without using any public cloud. But still, we can see public cloud like Microsoft Azure, GCP, and AWS. They are still live and they're doing very well. So this gives us another way to look at this question. So, you know, cloud is everywhere, but they are not disappeared, right? We are still using cloud. And even based on cloud, they are building industry. So you don't need to spend your money, expertise, or people on those infra level. You keep focusing on your business. Exactly like today, AI. You don't need to worry about where the token coming from and how to make the token efficiency. Just focusing on the business, your gaming, your e-commerce, your enterprise applications. That's where we can help, and you know, with those kind of things. So again, people just focusing on their business, not the infra side. Token AI is the new infra in this world.
Anything else, Doug?
One quick one, which is that one of my favorite things about like the you know, new databases, for example, that you could take that a different way, like, oh, vector databases are the new hot commodity, and those startups will live just long enough to become a turnkey AWS feature.
The question is, why do we call it ontology, man?
How we apply the concept of ontology to what you are doing?
Sure. So an ontology, for those in the audience that don't know, is basically a node graph or a knowledge graph of information that is relating a particular concept, like an entity, a workflow, a document, a person, to other related entities.
Like what?
So, for example, I myself as an entity within an ontology, as a user on my platform, I would relate to all the documents that I've produced, the team that I work on, the clients that I work on, the contracts, etc. And that allows the AI to have this external memory that it can search. Because when you go and you use a model, it feels naive, right? It doesn't know you as a person. And so there's a lot of these fancy techniques behind the scenes that allow us to give memory to the models, so that way it feels much closer to knowing you.
How this relates to token economy?
Because behind the scenes of your token provider, like Claude, as you had mentioned before, they're doing those techniques. But that's accruing value to Anthropic, and your switching cost is very high because that doesn't follow you to another provider. And so you have to care about where you're spending your money, so that way you're protecting the knowledge and the expertise that you're putting into the system, and it doesn't go towards, for example, what the big labs are doing, releasing Claude Legal, Claude Design, Claude Security, and eating their own customer base from the inside out.
Yeah, and then just internally at Ignite, right? Brandon, my co-founder, is the architect of our agentic architecture. When we first started out, it was X amount of dollars, and by the second month, as we implemented database in our ontology, usage went up 3 times, but the cost dropped by 80%. That's probably the right step, right? So having that data organized in the ontology provides a more effective AI usage, but then also a lot of cost savings. So high upside, that's a big topic that we can probably tackle as a separate session if we do this again, yeah? So thank you everybody. This is our last panel of the day. Now we get to the fun stuff. Hopefully